The day Adrian Vance and I were supposed to get engaged, he disappeared. The next day, his first love, Isabel Moreau, updated her Instagram. The photo was of Adrian's back as he watched the sunset from a mountaintop with the caption, 12 hours, from sunset to sunrise. I liked the post, then exited the app to reply to my mother, who had just texted to say she was on her way. She had traveled 12 hours alone on a train to come to this city just to meet her future son-in-law. But now, it seemed like there would be no need for that meeting, ever.
Hello, my friends. I'm Claire, and this is Claire Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story.
The whole world knew Adrian Vance loved Isabel Moreau. I was no exception. The story goes that Adrian fell for Isabel the moment he saw her at their Harvard orientation. They had a passionate 3-year romance that everyone knew about. If Isabel hadn't gone abroad to study after graduation, perhaps that intense love would have lasted a lifetime. My relationship with Adrian, on the other hand, was quiet and understated, known by very few. I used to think it was his way of protecting me. So when he suggested, for the third time, that he meet my mother to discuss our engagement, my mother once again boarded a train for a 12-hour journey to Boston. The first 2 times, he'd canceled, citing urgent work matters. I was disappointed, but told myself I understood. It wasn't until I saw that Instagram post that I finally understood the truth. Perhaps I would never see the day Adrian met my mother. The cab driver announced we had arrived, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a sweltering summer night, the air still thick with the day's heat. I looked up at the window of the apartment I shared with Adrian. It was dark. As expected, he wasn't home. I slept poorly that night, drifting between a hazy consciousness and sharp clarity. After washing up the next morning, I poured myself a glass of warm water. Just as the warmth spread through my stomach, the front door opened, letting in a gust of hot air that was quickly swallowed by the 75-degree air conditioning. Adrian took off his leather shoes and paused when he saw me. "Something important came up yesterday," he said. "Please apologize to your mother for me." Normally, I would have nodded understandingly and added, "It's okay, we'll be together forever. There will be plenty of other chances." But now, all I could picture was my mother's lonely figure as she left, and a feeling of injustice washed over me. I no longer wanted to make excuses for him. I wondered, if it had been Isabel's mother who had traveled 12 hours on a train to see him, would he have been so indifferent? No, he would have driven 12 hours himself to meet her. Love me, love my dog. His coldness toward my mother proved only one thing. He didn't love me. All my compromises had been nothing but wishful thinking. The answer had been there all along. I set my glass down and looked at him, my gaze calm. "Isabel's affairs are clearly more important," I said slowly. The words hung in the air, a silent truth finally spoken aloud. It was a relief. Adrian's brow furrowed, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. His tone was sharp. "She twisted her ankle while hiking with friends. She couldn't get down the mountain." His implication was clear. Don't be unreasonable. Of course I was with her. It was my duty. You should know your place. I wanted to argue with him. A twisted ankle? Weren't her friends with her? Could she really not get down the mountain without you? But I didn't. The image of him carrying Isabel down the mountain didn't even stir a ripple in my heart. "So, is she feeling better?" My response seemed to catch Adrian off guard. This was clearly not the reaction he was expecting. After all, he liked me for being understanding. As I looked at the momentarily speechless Adrian Vance, a sudden, clear thought surfaced in my mind. I think I don't love him anymore. I didn't wait for Adrian's answer, nor did I care to. I wasn't genuinely concerned about Isabel. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. As I passed him, he grabbed my arm. "I'll drive you to work." I had asked him to drive me to my office countless times, but he had always refused. Now he was offering it like a gift, but to me, it felt like a cage. I gently pulled my hand away, a faint smile on my lips. "No, thank you. You must be tired. You should stay home and rest." The moment the door closed behind me, I let out a long sigh of relief. I had been with Adrian for 2 years. I first met him at a campus recruitment event at Harvard. I was a senior, about to step into the professional world, and countless companies had come to campus to recruit new talent. We were all waiting to be chosen. Adrian had graduated 3 years ahead of me. He was a Harvard alum, which was why he had personally graced this job fair with his presence. I had just started my freshman year when he was a senior doing his internship. He had since taken over his family's business, Vance Corporation, and had already made a name for himself in the architecture industry. My major, architectural design, was naturally a key area he was targeting. He spoke with a captivating energy, and every woman in the lecture hall was mesmerized by his looks and charisma. It was then that I finally saw the male lead of the legendary campus love story in person. Adrian and Isabel were in the same year and had been inseparable. Isabel studied ballet, and going abroad was the best path for her career. He had reluctantly seen her off at the airport, where she had broken up with him on the spot. I couldn't understand why she would heartlessly abandon such an outstanding man. But still, I was grateful to her. If not for her cruelty, her decisiveness, and the way she had completely broken Adrian's heart, I might never have had a chance to be with him. The year I graduated, I successfully received an offer from Vance Corporation. One night while working late, I nervously confessed my feelings to Adrian. The moment he nodded, I could hear my own heart pounding like a drum. I told myself that in every drama, the male lead has to go through a soul-crushing relationship with a predecessor before meeting the true female lead. I was convinced that I was the one who was meant to be with Adrian in the end. As it turns out, a fiery old flame will always lose to the idealized first love. Or maybe in Adrian's heart, I didn't even count as a flame. Claire, could you come to the conference room? At 10 in the morning, my manager Linda's voice pulled me away from my work. I followed her to the upstairs conference room. To my surprise, Adrian and Isabel were inside, chatting happily. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they saw me. Isabel gave me a cool but polite nod and a small smile. I collected myself and nodded back in acknowledgement. With her refined ballerina's posture and delicate, cool features, she was a perfect match for Adrian. They truly looked like a match made in heaven. And I was merely an insignificant side character. Ms. Moreau has returned to the country with her portfolio and needs to build her reputation quickly, Linda explained, getting straight to business. Mr. Vance's idea is to hang giant posters of Ms. Moreau on all the buildings we have partnerships with. You'll be in charge of this project. Here is the list of locations. You can discuss the specifics with them. Linda patted my shoulder, entrusting me with the important task. The door closed, leaving me alone with Adrian and Isabel. I didn't feel as nervous as I had expected. Rest assured, Ms. Moreau, I will get this done as quickly as possible, I said, my voice professional. In my 2 years at Vance Corp, Adrian had helped me a great deal professionally, and I hadn't let him down. I was no longer an unknown designer. I had handled major landmark projects across the country and was comfortable in these situations. Otherwise, he wouldn't have entrusted me with something so important to him and Isabel. But it was clear Isabel wasn't interested in the business details. She gracefully pulled 2 boxes of fruit from her designer handbag. I heard you've been taking good care of Adrian. I just wanted to meet you. We were in a bit of a rush, but Adrian and I picked out a couple of boxes of fresh mangoes downstairs. You can have them during your break. They're very sweet. My eyes shifted between Adrian and Isabel. They looked like a newlywed couple graciously thanking their wedding guests. When I didn't say anything, Adrian spoke up in a low voice. Take them. It's a small gesture from Isabel. For the first time, I defied Adrian's wishes. I pushed the mangoes back toward Isabel. The rejection was obvious. Isabel looked at Adrian, a helpless expression on her face. Seeing me rebuff her kind gesture, Adrian's brow tightened. He said, "Don't be so unreasonable." His voice was edged with impatience. I calmly met his cold gaze. In the reflection of his pupils, I saw my own pale, weary face. So that was it. In his eyes, unreasonable was my defining trait. I closed the folder with the list and slowly stood up, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Thank you for your kindness, Ms. Moreau, but I'm allergic to mangoes, so I can't enjoy them. Perhaps if you bring a different fruit next time, I'd be happy to accept." Adrian's slightly parted lips trembled, and a stunned surprise crossed his face. Isabel was also taken aback, but a triumphant smirk quickly flickered across her lips, as if to say, "See? You mean nothing to him." I wasn't bothered by her silent mockery. After all, what she was thinking was the truth. "I have work to do, so I won't disturb you two any longer." My voice was so cold and distant that it silenced the words Adrian was about to say. The list Linda gave me wasn't long. It was mostly landmark buildings in Boston, places like the Prudential Center and prominent office towers. They were either bustling hubs of activity or imposing, prestigious skyscrapers. It felt like a public declaration of his love for her, for all the world to see. The difference between being loved and not being loved was starkly clear. I thought I could remain indifferent to Adrian's actions, but when I attached the photos he had so carefully selected to an email for the poster production company, my heart still clenched in pain. I was driving to the last destination on my list when I received a text from Adrian. "Have something tonight. Go to bed early." I glanced at it once and turned off the screen. A dull, gnawing pain spread from my back through my entire body. I knew exactly what he had to do. Before I left the office, Isabel had sent me an image of a poster, insisting that it be displayed on the main screen at the Prudential Center by 6 p.m. today. The poster was simple, a photo of her dancing gracefully in ballet shoes with large, bold text next to it. "Tonight at 8 p.m., the Boston Opera House, the renowned ballerina's debut performance upon her return." They would spend the day together, planning the promotion. She would be enchanting on stage, and he would be in the audience applauding her from morning till night. I really should go to bed early. I didn't want to be the annoying person who ruins a beautiful dream. I rolled down the car window, letting the hot wind slap against my clammy cheeks. While everyone else was rushing into the subway stations at the end of the workday, I was heading against the flow to my final stop. The last location on my list was a tower on State Street. This commercial building belonged solely to Ethan Cole. Ethan was one of the few people who knew about my relationship with Adrian, and he was also Adrian's best friend. I naturally assumed this meeting would be smooth sailing. I had saved it as the easy final task of my day. I never expected he would be the only one on the list to refuse me. I sat awkwardly in Ethan Cole's massive office. He had his assistant bring me a glass of iced white grape juice. "Do you know about Adrian and Isabel?" he asked, sitting down on the sofa next to me. The cushion sank under his weight, pulling me back to reality. I clutched the glass and nodded. "I know." A sudden silence fell over the office, broken only by the soft ticking of the Rolex on Ethan's wrist. "I never knew you were so generous," he said. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it, but his tone seemed tinged with sarcasm. I had neither the time nor the energy to trade barbs with him. "I've done my part by coming here. As for your decision, I think you should tell Adrian yourself." I stood up to leave, but Ethan's voice stopped me. "It's Isabel's first performance since she came back. Don't you want to see it?" I stopped and tightened the grip on the strap of my canvas bag. I turned to face him. "Can you get me in?" The truth was, I wasn't interested in Isabel's performance. I just wanted to see what the Isabel in Adrian's eyes looked like. I don't know what expression was on my face as I looked at Ethan, but maybe he felt sorry for me. I saw the tension in his brow visibly relax. Ethan drove me to the Boston Opera House in a Mercedes that was, for him, quite understated. The car was quiet. Ethan and I didn't have much to talk about. We hadn't met many times. Our first meeting had also been at that Harvard job fair during my senior year. He had come with Adrian. Perhaps because he was more low-key, the whispers about him were quieter. People said that he was a business scion in Boston's financial world, a man with a strong core who didn't mess around. They said that compared to the rebellious Adrian, the emotionally stable Ethan was a much better choice for a partner. Unlike Adrian's unconventional path, Ethan's life was a steady, upward trajectory. My most vivid memory of him was that he had personally handed me my job offer. I had already received the electronic offer from Vance Corp, and, since the start date was soon, I had quickly rented a small, one-bedroom apartment near the office. The first person to knock on the door of that little apartment was Ethan Cole. I thought it was a delivery, so I was completely off guard when I opened the door to see him standing there. "How did you know I was here?" I asked, confused. Ethan looked equally surprised, but a spark of delight appeared in his eyes. "You know me?" he asked, slightly out of breath. I nodded. "Does it have to be architecture? What about finance?" "Of course, I'm no good at switching fields. Adrian Vance is my role model." He then pulled a formal offer letter from behind his back. "Your official offer. I wish you a bright future. I wish all the Harvard graduates from your year a bright future." It was almost 8 o'clock when Ethan led me into the opera house. The theater, which seated nearly 500 people, was already packed. Ethan found us seats in a corner at the very back. We were swallowed by the crowd, but through the sea of people, I could clearly see Adrian sitting in the front row, right in the center. He was busy, periodically checking his phone for work matters, yet he still managed to carve out an entire evening to watch Isabel's performance. At 8 o'clock, the show began. The lights dimmed, leaving a single spotlight on Isabel in her costume. At that moment, she truly looked like a swan descended from heaven, graceful, beautiful, and full of life. Years ago, I couldn't understand why she would abandon a man as wonderful as Adrian to pursue her career abroad. Now, I had an epiphany. If you bloom, he will come to you. I took one last look at the back of Adrian's head and walked out of the theater amid the thunderous applause of Isabel's final bow. The hot night air hit me in waves, but my heart felt like it had been plunged into a block of ice, cold and numb. The performance had just ended, and news of Adrian and Isabel's rumored romance was already spreading like wildfire. It was on the giant screens on the street, the top push notification on my phone, and playing on a loop on the taxi radio. For a moment, every corner of the city was filled with their happiness. I didn't understand. Did Adrian love Isabel? Undoubtedly, but if he loved her, why not break up with me first and then give her a complete, untainted love? Or perhaps he was already planning to, just waiting for the right moment. I declined Ethan's offer to drive me home and walked back to the apartment complex like a zombie. I looked up. The light was on. Adrian was back. I went upstairs, opened the door, and was hit by the strong smell of tobacco. I changed into my slippers in the entryway, placing my shoes in the cabinet. Looking at the few pairs of expensive leather shoes that Adrian kept here, I felt a wave of disorientation. It wasn't that Adrian hadn't made any compromises for me. Before he met me, he was used to living in a large villa. Because I said a smaller place felt more like a home, he bought this small apartment. Adrian was sitting on the sofa, his eyes bloodshot. He looked at me with a hint of apology, as if reflecting on his behavior earlier that day. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought mangoes were your favorite." I closed the shoe cabinet and turned to face him, my expression blank. "Isabel's favorite fruit is mango." I saw Adrian's open mouth snap shut. I started to walk past him toward the bathroom, but he called my name, his voice tight with anxiety. "Claire?" I turned around and looked at him calmly. Perhaps taken aback by my cold expression, the words he wanted to say caught in his throat. He awkwardly changed the subject. "You didn't have to work late today, but you came back so late, you didn't answer my texts." I pressed my lips together. "I went to see Isabel's performance." My answer surprised him. The thought that I might have seen him and Isabel being swarmed by reporters made a rare look of guilt flash in his eyes. He stood up, looking flustered. "She said it was her first performance since coming back, and she wanted a friend there to support her." I looked at him, seeing him as nothing more than a melted ice cream cone in the summer heat. The numbness in my heart made me want to stop arguing, but the thought of my mother's disappointment gave me the strength to speak. "As you should. She only twisted her ankle yesterday and was on the stage today, so she definitely needed your concern. Perhaps Adrian suddenly remembered Isabel's effortless and joyful performance because the look of apology on his face deepened. I looked at his flustered expression and nonchalantly pursed my lips. You don't have to explain. It's your choice. The next morning, Adrian was in the kitchen, ladling porridge from a pot into a ceramic bowl. I had dreamed countless times of him cooking for me. Now that it was happening, it felt incredibly unreal. The porridge was still steaming, and he carefully blew on it to cool it down. When he saw me come out of the bedroom, he smiled, as if nothing had happened last night. By the time you've washed up, this will be just right. I sat down across from him. The green bean porridge was a simple homemade dish, but perhaps because the person in front of me was no longer the person in my heart, it tasted bland. I've arranged for someone to bring our mothers to Boston, he said. It's time we set a date for the wedding. My hand, holding the spoon, froze. I frowned at him, my voice trembling with anger. Who gave you the right to make that decision on your own? Adrian looked at my furious expression, a flash of panic in his eyes. He asked in disbelief, "You don't want to marry me?" I sat up straight and looked him directly in the eye, my tone firmer than it had ever been. That's right, I don't. If this had been last week, or even the day before yesterday, I would have eagerly dragged him to City Hall. Even if he hadn't asked, I would have wanted to shout our happiness to the world. But things were different now. I didn't want to lie to myself anymore. I didn't love Adrian, and I knew with certainty that he didn't love me. I wasn't interested in why he started a relationship with me in the first place. I only knew that we had no future. This was where it had to end. I watched as the expression on Adrian's face shifted from disbelief to panic. When I wanted to marry him, he had ignored me. Now that I didn't, he was suddenly desperate. Tears streamed down my face without warning. I didn't even know what I was crying about. Adrian pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry, Claire," he said. "I never thought you'd refuse me. I'm truly afraid of losing you." I cried until I was dizzy, but his words, "afraid of losing you," were painfully clear. I fought to stop myself from falling back into the endless spiral. I repeated a warning to myself over and over in my mind. He's not afraid of losing me. He's just upset that something he thought he could have so easily is slipping through his fingers. Adrian continued to argue, his voice urgent. "It will be okay. Everything will be okay. Just give me a chance. Let me meet your mother." I wiped the tears from my face with the back of my hand and tried to calm myself. Taking a deep breath, I mumbled my assent. Adrian looked down at me, a glimmer of light returning to his hollow eyes. He naturally assumed I would give in to him, just like I always had. Adrian personally chose the restaurant. It was a famous, high-end place with lavish decor. He wore a custom-tailored suit, and I wore the red dress I had prepared for our very first engagement discussion, with my long hair tied up. "We'll meet your mother today. My parents are flying back in a couple of days. We'll set the date, have the wedding, and everything will be settled." Adrian was cheerfully planning our wonderful future, just as I once had. He took my hand and placed it on his arm, chattering away like a child showing off. I looked at the reflection of my weary self in his pupils, while his own vibrant energy was reflected in my eyes. 2 years. In just 2 years, our roles had completely reversed. We walked side by side, drawing envious glances from others, but my heart was a barren wasteland. I knew with absolute certainty that, without me realizing it, time had slowly changed our relationship, pushing us apart until there was no going back. Just as we pushed open the door to the private room, Adrian's phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. My heart clenched for a second, then relaxed. It was like waiting for an icicle hanging from the eaves to fall. You're afraid of it falling, but you're also afraid of it not falling. When it finally crashes down, all you feel is a sense of relief. Adrian frantically declined the call. He gave me a weak, forced smile and led me forward. We hadn't even sat down when his phone rang again. For once, Adrian looked at me with a helpless expression. I took a sip of the lemon water in my glass. It was sour and faint. My voice was calm and detached. "Answer it." Given my permission, Adrian immediately answered the phone. I couldn't hear what was said on the other end, but I saw the expression on his face grow increasingly tense. He covered the receiver and looked at me, his voice urgent and panicked. "Isabel was in a car accident. I have to—" It was expected, yet it still felt inevitable. I didn't hesitate. "Go." Adrian hadn't expected me to agree so easily. The voice on the other end of the phone snapped him from his momentary hesitation. He looked at me apologetically. "What about your mother?" My grip on the water glass tightened until my knuckles turned white. My heart felt like it was being crushed. Once tea gets cold, you shouldn't refill it. No matter how full you make the cup, it will never taste the same. Finally, he had given me the last reason I needed to let go. "It's fine. I'll explain it to my mom." My words completely absolved him of any guilt. "Tell your mother I'm sorry," he said, then practically ran out of the room without a single look back. There was no need to be sorry. The next time would just be another apology anyway. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my mom. "Sweetie, I'll be there in a few minutes. Ben is a great driver. I didn't get carsick at all this time." My mom's voice was full of joy. Even though I had been through this 3 times and knew that greater hope only led to greater disappointment, the thought of my mom's crestfallen face made me break down again. I buried my face in my hands, and my tears fell onto the plate, the soft pat-pat sound echoing the shattering of my heart. I pushed myself up from the table and stumbled out of the room, feeling utterly defeated. I ran into Ethan Cole, who was being escorted by a group of people. He glanced at the empty private room, then looked back at me with sudden understanding. "He stood you up again, didn't he?" I didn't confirm or deny it. I just walked past him and headed for the main entrance. A black BMW brought my mother. Perhaps because she felt she was finally being treated with importance by Adrian, or perhaps because the driver, Ben, had spent the ride telling her how wonderful Adrian was to me. My mom was beaming and full of life when she got out of the car. "A nice car is so much more comfortable than the train," she said. "Sweetie, finally." Her voice trailed off when she saw that I was standing there alone. Ben's polite smile also froze on his face when he noticed my strained expression. After 2 years of emotional turmoil, I was surprised to find that I was the calmest one in that moment. The rotating table was filled with exquisite dishes. The brilliant lights made my face look pale. My mom gently took my hand, which was resting on my lap. Her unspoken questions were interrupted by a confident voice from the doorway. "I apologize for being late." Ethan Cole entered the room without any warning. He stood beside me, then bowed respectfully to my mother. "I'm sorry I'm late. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm Claire's fiancé." I saw the confusion in my mother's eyes, deep confusion. She was wondering how my boyfriend's name had changed from Adrian to Ethan. She wasn't a fool. Even if she had never met Adrian, she remembered his name clearly. I wanted to tell Ethan that he didn't have to be so convincing, whether he was doing it out of pity for me or as a favor to his best friend. But before I could say a word, Ethan started chatting animatedly with my mother, discussing everything from his family's business to his nieces and nephews, as if to prevent me from protesting. He laid out his entire family history for her. My mother's standard for judging whether someone was good to me was whether they knew my tastes. So when she saw Ethan push away a glass of mango juice and ask the waiter to replace it with white grape juice for me, her fondness for him began to grow. My mom smiled throughout the entire meal. She didn't ask about the wedding again. She knew she couldn't demand any promises from this man who had appeared out of nowhere. She respected all of my choices. After dinner, for the first time, my mom decided to stay the night in Boston. In the past, she always felt that Adrian's refusal to meet her meant he didn't like her, and she was afraid her presence would lower my standing in his eyes. Realizing this made me understand how unfilial I had been, completely consumed by love. Ethan arranged for my mom to stay in a nearby hotel, and I stayed with her. When Ethan was about to leave, I walked him to the door. I twisted my fingers together. The night breeze was already cool. I looked up at Ethan. "Thank you for tonight," I said. My mom was very happy. Ethan laced his hands behind his head and glanced at me casually. "And you?" "Me?" He nodded. "Yes, were you happy?" I tilted my head and thought for a moment. Was I happy? Of course. As long as my mom is happy, I'm happy. But you don't have to cover for Adrian like this anymore. He won't be grateful. Adrian didn't care about my feelings, so he certainly wouldn't be grateful for anyone else's help. I saw Ethan smile, a cryptic, unreadable smile. "What makes you think he needs his gratitude?" I was stunned. Looking into Ethan's sparkling eyes, an incredible thought popped into my head. The smile on my face froze. "My mom doesn't know how to work the air conditioning in her room," I said quickly. I fled. A woman's intuition is sometimes scarily accurate, but this time I hoped it was wrong, because all twisted relationships are like iridescent soap bubbles shimmering in the sun. Beautiful, but they pop at the slightest touch. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my mother rustling around, packing her things. I turned over. She was at the sink, combing her hair. Strands of white hair fell, and she carefully picked them up with a tissue, balled it up, and threw it in the trash. My mother was only in her early 50s. She shouldn't have had so much gray hair. I knew it was my masterpiece, and my nose began to sting. My mother looked up and saw that my eyes were open. She smiled gently. "Sweetie, I just want you to be happy." "Can I be happy?" I didn't dare answer. She took my hand. "Some choices you have to make for yourself, but no matter what, I'll always be behind you." She knew everything. Every time she had come and been let down, she had suffered more than I did. I squeezed her hand back, the tight line of my lips slowly curving into a smile. "Mom, I won't let myself be mistreated anymore." I watched her nod forcefully, her eyes welling up with tears, as if trying to banish all the pain I had endured over the past 2 years. After seeing my mother off at the station, I looked toward the pinkish glow of the sunrise in the east. Finally, the sky was clearing. The phone in my bag had been ringing intermittently for over 12 hours since last night. I lit up the screen and carefully read through the messages, from last night all the way to the one that had just arrived. 8:15 p.m. "Claire, Isabel really was in a car accident. I'm taking her to the hospital now." This was followed by a photo of a woman's pale, bloody ankle. 9 p.m. "Claire, the doctors say Isabel needs surgery on her leg as soon as possible. I can't leave." Attached was a photo of the illuminated surgery in progress sign. And then the last few messages. "Adrian, Claire, did you not come home last night?" This was followed by several missed voice calls. I stared at the string of messages from Adrian with complete indifference, my heart no longer stirring in the slightest. I used to believe that love could grow over time, that if I just loved him enough, loved him with all my heart, my wish would be granted. But that was just a belief. There is no better teacher than falling down yourself. Pain is the best teacher. The latest message from Adrian read, "Claire, let's get married right now. Let's go to City Hall immediately." So, did I win, Adrian? Is it true that once you get something, you forget the feeling of standing on your tiptoes and peering through a window just to catch a glimpse of it? No, I could never forget the suffering I endured for the past 2 years. If this continued, my mother's heart would break. I sat on a bench in the bus station, watching the bus carrying my mother slowly pull away. I picked up my phone, my fingertips dancing across the screen. Message sent. A rectangular dialog box, a green background with a single line of text. "Let's break up." Adrian began calling and texting me at all hours, regardless of the time or place. He had become the one who was tormented. I took an afternoon off from work to go back and pack my things. Adrian wasn't home. On a sweltering summer day, he had drawn the curtains tight, and the air in the room was thick with the smell of stale smoke and alcohol. I kicked a rolling beer bottle out of the way and navigated a path through the cluttered living room to the bedroom. I used to think of this place as our home, so there were many things here that belonged to us, that belonged to me, but on closer inspection, it seemed there was nothing worth taking. I found my ID and passport in the bedside drawer. For me, that was all I needed to take. I looked around the room, the memories of the past 2 years replaying in my mind. Perhaps I never belonged here in the first place. Leaving was always just a matter of time. Just as my foot crossed the threshold of the bedroom, the sound of the keypad lock unlocking clicked through the apartment. I looked up, and my eyes met Adrian's. The decisive, callous man from 2 days ago was gone. His face showed no anger, only exhaustion. He was clearly not doing well. Seeing the ID and passport clutched in my hand, a look of pain crossed his face. "Claire, do we have to break up?" he asked, his voice pleading. I put the documents in my bag and let out a soft, "Mm-hmm." Before I could take a step, his voice came again. "Claire, I was wrong. I really was. I know how to change now." An apology after the hurt felt like an insult. Saying you love someone while continuously hurting them, I was the only one who knew what those suffocating days felt like. I knew better than anyone that we could never go back. "Adrian, I'm just so tired." If not for the mountains of disappointment, how could one's eyes be so devoid of joy and sorrow? Adrian collapsed onto the sofa. "I thought the best way to get over an ex was with time in a new relationship," he said. "I thought I didn't love you." I looked at him with empty eyes, not stopping him from speaking. "But that day, when you told me you went to her show, you were so cold. When I knew I was spending all my time with another woman and you weren't fazed at all, I started to wonder if you didn't care about me anymore. I thought I could be indifferent to you too. But when she asked me to break up with you, all I could think about was how sad you would be." He absently spun a beer bottle on the coffee table. "Claire," he said, "did I realize this too late?" I looked past him at the expensive painting he had bought, an image of young green seedlings, and took a deep breath. I slowly exhaled one word. "Yes." A few days after I broke up with Adrian, a string of messages came from an unknown number. It was Isabel. "Claire, can you just get lost? Why is it your name that Adrian calls out in his sleep?" And then, "Claire, I'm begging you. Can you please come see Adrian? I'm afraid if this goes on, he really won't make it." I turned off my phone and removed the SIM card. The darkness and the pain would eventually pass. For me, and for Adrian too. The day I left the city, I didn't tell anyone. I was pushing my suitcase through the spacious terminal at Logan Airport when a broad figure appeared behind me, casting a shadow over me. Ethan Cole stopped beside me, panting. "Do you have to go?" he asked. I nodded. "Of course. If I stay in this industry, in this city, I'll never escape Adrian's shadow. Does it have to be architecture? What about finance?" I pushed my luggage cart forward, walking away from him. I waved over my shoulder. "I'll think about it."